having someone with you in that space, even if they just sit there, Jane,
Yes.
and don't say a word, there's so much value and so much support in that. So there would be days that I would just sit in my house and cry all day long, missing my mom. And my parents were divorced, but my dad was kind enough to come and try to support us kids. We're all grown, in case you can't tell. We're all grown. Both of my siblings are married. I'm single. And so he felt to support me a little bit more. So I'm grateful that he did that.
Welcome to the Unfiltered Minds Podcast, the only culturally diverse podcast where we discuss ways to destigmatize mental health, as well as promote self-seeking behaviors amongst our youth and family members struggling with ADHD or depression. Now, here's your host, Jane Levy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unfiltered Mind Podcast. This is the platform where we discuss ways to destigmatize mental health, as well as promote self-help-seeking behaviors amongst our youth and their family members. We are super excited to have our guest today. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you for having me.
Courtney, she is a human service counselor with a diverse background in trauma resolution, counseling, leadership, and education. Courtney, can you please add to whatever I have said right now and just give us a little bit of background of your experience and how long you've been doing this, please?
Yes. So I have been doing this for about 6.5 years. I received my master's in human services counseling from Regent University in 2017. And while I was working in that program, I found out about a couple different programs they have. One is a trauma studies program, and that kind of piqued my interest. So I started taking some additional courses and became a certified traumatologist through the Green Cross Academy of Traumatology. And then I started studying with the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation and learned many different ways to help folks who have been in crisis or have critical incidents. Things that we think of like the unfortunate shootings we see often, first responders who report to a scene where there's pretty massive casualty or injured children. That's always hard.
Yeah.
And then I've done some additional education on somatics and EMDR. So I'm able to work with a variety of folks. I primarily work with adults, but I do have a wide network to help folks that have children that need some assistance as well.
Wonderful. Now, you did mention about EMDR. What is that?
So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it is basically using both sides of your brain. I talk with my hands. I'm so sorry. So
That's okay.
both sides of your brain. So you know how when you sleep, your eyes go kind of back and forth?
Yeah.
That's your body processing your day. You're using both sides of your brain. So with EMDR, what we do is we help you get through any memories. Oftentimes they're traumatic memories that get stuck. And so we mimic that eye movement by either using a light, our hands. If there's someone with light sensitivity or sensory issues, we'll have them hold little buzzers. So it's like zzz, 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 zzz. Or we can actually have them do a tap, like a butterfly tap
Mhm.
on each side. Excuse me, stimulating both sides of the body. And that has been proven to help people process the trauma that they've experienced and those memories and get them from being stuck and kind of all up every day, every day, every day. That's kind of what haunts you, and being able to put it in your folders in your brain. So it moves everything from the prefrontal cortex through the amygdala and back into where it needs to go into your brain.
Amazing. Can that be used for depression patient who experience a depression as well, or just trauma patient?
It has a wide variety of protocols. We primarily use it in trauma, but
Okay.
absolutely, if someone is in a depressive episode and they're ruminating on the same thing over and over and over and over, then we would have them focus on whatever that feeling is, where they feel it in their body. And then with that protocol, we can try to find what the root of some of those depressive symptoms are and attack that root. So we could certainly do it that way as well.
Interesting. Thank you so much for explaining that.
Of course.
So, Courtney, I have you on here. Of course, you're a therapist. You've been doing this for quite some time, but you also have some tragic experiences. In March of 2020, your mother passed away.
Yes.
And right after that, in 2022, you also have a tragic loss. Your father passed away as well.
Yes.
How did that affect your mental health in general?
It was hard. And I say that losing anyone you love is hard. But my mom passed away the day, well, not the day before. She passed away March 10th of 2020. The world shut down on March 16th, 2020.
Mm.
And so we didn't have the opportunity, I have two siblings. We didn't have the opportunity to hold a proper service for her, to do things that are traditional with like a funeral, have a wake, have a service, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So those rituals are very important to a lot of people in reference to being able to kind of start the processing of their grief. With her, we kind of grieved a while because she had dementia, she had a lot of comorbidities. She was a heart patient, a lung patient, a kidney patient. So she had been declining for a while, and she had her dementia symptoms so badly that she had kind of regressed into infancy. So she would lay in the bed and cry out, "Mama, Mama." And so we had to grieve the loss of our mother almost before she passed away. And that is a very unique grief. Watching someone you love who is so vivacious and strong basically fade into a child and almost into an infant in front of your eyes. The roles are reversed. You've lost your mom essentially already.
Yeah.
And then when she passed away, her physical body was gone and we just couldn't hear her voice anymore. And that for me was very sad. And then the world shut down and I got stuck in my house by myself.
Yeah, there was
You
no
know,
support from friends.
Mm-mm.
Everything has to be virtual.
Yes. And
Okay.
having someone with you in that space, even if they just sit there, Jane,
Yes.
and don't say a word, there's so much value and so much support in that. So there would be days that I would just sit in my house and cry all day long, missing my mom. And my parents were divorced, but my dad was kind enough to come and try to support us kids. We're all grown, in case you can't tell. So we're all grown. Both of my siblings are married. I'm single. And so he felt to support me a little bit more. So I'm grateful that he did that. And then in 2022, last June, I'm sorry, June 5th of 2022, he was walking down a sidewalk, hit an uneven step, fell and hit his head. And he did make it.
Unexpected
S-
death. Yeah.
Yes, very. So with my mom, it was long and drawn out. And with my dad, he tripped and fell. He was on blood thinners. He had a massive brain hemorrhage. The blood pushed his brain over and he just didn't make it. So they flew him back. He was in North Carolina. They flew him back here to Trauma Center in Norfolk and they did everything they could, but he wasn't viable for life. And that, you're not ready.
Yeah.
You're never ready. But with my mom, we knew.
Yes.
So we kind of had time to prepare our hearts. And then with my dad, it was just a complete shock. And we had some experience with my mom, kind of the motions of what you do afterwards,
Yeah.
getting in contact with their cremation society or burial facility. With us, we chose cremation. Um, having that coordinated, but the hospital wants their room.
Yes.
Like,
Quick turnaround for another
yeah.
patient. Yeah.
And even as a mental health professional, I'm like, I need a minute. I
To
need a minute.
process
We need a minute,
everything. Yeah.
you know? And they're like, nope, we need the room. Where do you want him to go? I'm like, do you have a freezer? Like, isn't there a morgue in this hospital?
Yeah.
Like, can you put him, it was a Sunday.
Yeah.
Can you put him somewhere so we can figure this out? It's Sunday, nowhere's open. And so with my daddy, our grieving was delayed because he had no plans in place. And he owned two businesses, three properties, and a bunch of vehicles. So we had to immediately go into who are we going to get his contracts offloaded to? Because he owned his own businesses. He was a repair kind of guy and he did sign work. So can we find anyone to do this work? How do we find out who he owes work to? So it kind of went in, we didn't get a chance to grieve because we went straight into handling his estate, his affairs, his business. And the entire summer, last summer was all about handling my dad's stuff. And then I actually tripped and fell and tore my meniscus while cleaning out his stuff. So
Oh,
then I
God.
was injured.
That even delayed the process, Yvonne.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. And then I got COVID. I had surgery. And quite honestly, I didn't have an opportunity to grieve his death until almost a year later. So the anniversary of his death was a little over a month ago, and we held his service until July 9th. So that was just Sunday. So that it's been a year, and we didn't have a chance to grieve during any of that time because we were handling all of his stuff. So I'll be honest, I had a complete and total meltdown one weekend,
Hmm.
like a 3-year-old, kicking my feet, crying,
I'm sure.
punching in the air, fussing at God. I had a full-on meltdown because sometimes we don't get to have that moment, and it's never just a moment, it's waves.
Yeah.
There's different parts of grief and it affects us all differently. I know all the tools. I could get through my day at work. I could get through there's always a therapist in the room is one of
Hmm.
the things I was taught in school,
Yes.
and that's me. And, and then I actually ended up losing both of my pets, both of my dogs during that period as well. It's been a challenging 2.5 years, very much.
Oh, I'm sorry about all your loss. I can only imagine. I have a little dog, a year-old dog, so I can only imagine that attachment, right? Because they are,
Yeah, well, my girl was with me when both of my parents died, and then she also fell and ended up
oh,
having significant pain, and I couldn't let her stay that way. So,
you had to put her down.
yeah,
Well, sorry, you're a strong woman, Courtney. You had a
thank
lot
you.
going on and you're here. And as a result of that unexpected loss of your dad, you even have a workshop, right?
Yes,
That you created.
yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that workshop and then the private Facebook group you have for,
Okay,
yeah. Hmm.
absolutely. So the workshop is it's actually tomorrow, but I'm going to
Hmm.
run it a couple more times. It's called Navigating Life's Uncertainties, and the reason I set it up is my daddy left us a mess.
Hmm.
A mess. And he didn't leave us any instructions. So a little bit of a trigger warning for your audience just in case you need it. When he was flown in, we were waiting. We got there, and I'm familiar with medical stuff, and I heard the trauma code blue twice, and I knew it was him. So they came in and they were like, "Hi, does your dad want to be resuscitated?" I'm like, "You've already resuscitated him twice. Why are you asking us now?" But my siblings and we were like, "We don't know. He never told us." And then
He never had a will in place, nothing.
no, no
Yeah.
will, no trust, no anything, not even a notarized piece of paper. I'm like, "You could have written it on a bar nap when you were out, like, something. Give us
Yeah.
anything."
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing. And then, after he passed, or right as we were getting ready to turn off the support, they were like, "Would you like to harvest his organs?" And we're like, "Well, they're really used. He's 77." We never had that conversation with him, so we didn't know what to say. We
Yeah.
were like, "I don't know if you want them." So we elected no, because there was 3 of us. We couldn't decide between the 3 of us, so we said no. He didn't tell us. We found out after he passed, and I'm so glad he was old school and got paper
Hmm.
everything still.
Hmm.
He had bank accounts we didn't know about. He had outstanding debts we didn't know about. He had lived a very diverse life. He was one of the original members of Bill Deal and the Rondells. You're probably way too young to remember them, but
Yeah.
so he had these beautiful instruments, like $6,000, $7,000 instruments. We didn't know what to do with them. We didn't know what their value was. We were gonna sell them at a
At
yard
the yard
sale.
sale.
Yeah, and one of his bandmates was like, "No," you know? Um, and he truly left no less than 5,000,000 things in his shop,
Oh, wow.
between all the screws and the paint and the shop vacs and the ceiling tiles and the hand sanitizing machines and random bolts and nuts and equipment, because he'd been in business since 1968.
Oh, that's a long time.
We had no idea what he wanted to do with that kinda stuff. Um, and then when we called for life insurance, we weren't listed as the beneficiaries. We didn't know who was listed as the beneficiaries. So it ended up that one of his policies was still in my mom's name from 1970. So I created the course to be like, update your beneficiaries if you get divorced or someone passes away, or if you have more children. It ended up being my mom and my brother, because my sister and I weren't born yet. Then we had to prove our identity. We had to prove that we were truly the biological children of these two people at 50, 55, and 45 years old.
You'll be amazed how people just forget things to update things
Mhm.
like that, right? Like you said, you guys were not
Yes.
born at that time, and
Yeah.
he's a busy man. He owned businesses, so really that
Mhm.
was really his focus, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And then you don't think about, did he have a Venmo? Did he have a Cash App? Did he
Yes.
have money on gift cards? You know, and he's old school. He had a few dollars hiding around his house, so we couldn't just throw things away. And
I'm
take
sure.
the books and open them up. I don't want anyone to have to do that. I
Okay.
don't want anyone to have to go through what we went through. Grieving is hard enough.
Yes.
Like, having that ache in your soul is hard enough. Give someone some instructions. Please let us know what to do, because then you can grab the book and say, all right, you want this, you want this, you want this. And you don't have to think about it. You just check it off. And that can make grieving much not easier, but having to do a whole bunch of stuff while you're grieving,
Hmm.
0, 0 stars. It is so hard. So hard.
So how long is the program?
It's 90 minutes,
It's 90
so
minutes. Okay.
mhm. So it is about I'll probably have 15 minutes of Q&A at the end.
Okay.
But since I'm not a licensed medical provider, licensed financial advisor, I go through my experience, what we did, and then I provide a big fat workbook of, stuff to write down. And it was all the stuff that we learned that we needed to find out. Believe it or not, you can't shut down someone's Facebook page or make it posthumous unless it becomes a legacy account. Any of the social media accounts, because then you have people going in and spamming or
Yeah.
stealing the account,
Yeah.
getting information. And a lot of people have their Facebook account noted to their PayPal. So there's all of these little things, but there's going to be a lot of information, so a lot of ground to cover, and hopefully, I really hope people find it to be beneficial.
Thank you so much. And I'll put that in the show notes when we post the video. So, were you a daddy's little girl or mommy's girl?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I was the middle child, so I kind of went to whichever
I
one.
am the middle child as well.
You know how that goes.
Yes, yes.
Um,
So, what is your favorite memories about your parents, your mom or dad? Both of
so
them.
with my mom, she loved the beach. Loved the beach. I know I'm pretty pale, you would not know it, but she would literally take us to the beach way before Croatan got built up, from sunup till sundown, every day it was not raining over summer break. And so I love the beach. I don't like to sit on the beach that long anymore at all, but I love the beach. So just spending time with her, because now everyone's glued to phones and all, computers and all that stuff. Nope, go get in the ocean, go play. And then we'd sit and talk, and she'd make, I don't know if you remember those hug drinks, like the little plastic hugs.
Yes, I do.
So we would have hug drinks and just talk and play, and I got to learn a little bit about her life from her yapping with her girlfriends
Yeah.
while we were at the beach. Um, and then, with my daddy, we actually sat in with his band one night. He definitely has the talent. In our family, it's not me and my sister. Um, but he got remarried, and the entire band came to play at his wedding. And so to let him, do his thing, we sat in with the band, and he played a couple songs, and then they very generously gave us a microphone. But that was so much fun, you know,
Yeah,
just getting in his world for a little while,
yeah, I'm
and
sure he
that
was
was a lot of
proud.
fun.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing those precious memories.
Thank you.
Now, you yourself, you have some certification as a grief counselor. Is that correct?
I do through Green Cross.
Yeah. So, what qualities do you or techniques do you offer your clients when they actually to cope with grief or loss?
So I use a person-centered approach versus
Mhm.
a specific techniques.
Okay.
So a lot of the things that I do, depending on where they are in their grief cycle, what they're doing, if they're able to take some time from work or studies or what have you, sit in it, feel it. You have to feel it. And then as you're ready to start processing that, it's kind of like what you just asked me, write down your favorite memories of your loved one.
Yes.
You know, make something that would honor them, whether that's a photo collage, a little pendant for a necklace. If you have children, sometimes you're kind of grieving together, depending on your faith base. Let them write a note to grandma or grandpa in heaven or Uncle Joe in heaven and let them honor a memory and then kind of create a little booklet with that. If it's something where it's just overwhelming, sometimes I'll just sit with them and just let them get it out. I'm also certified in tapping. I'm not sure if you're familiar with EFT or TFT tapping, where you tap on the meridians of the body. So there's certain patterns that you can go in on the inner part of the eyebrow, the outer part of the eye, under the nose, right on the chin, on the clavicle, under the arm. There's certain sequences that help with grief. And if you're
Okay.
not sure which one or you can't remember what I told you, just tap them all. Like there's you're just resetting some meridians. A lot of breathing, a lot of deep belly breathing, sometimes exhaling with a like audibly getting that sound out can make a difference. And then I also believe in other holistic modalities such as acupuncture. I have personally found that very beneficial in my grief journey. I was able to process a lot with my daddy because it was so unexpected, it was so different. In acupuncture sessions, she would set the needles and then would cry a lot, quite honestly. I cried a lot. And there was a couple times where I had a trauma release where you shake, and if you've never seen that, it looks not quite as much like a seizure, but you literally just, some people kind of shake. And then because I'm also certified in somatics, I will actually have my clients, all right, let's talk about it and start shaking, just stand, walk around the room, shake your arms out, shake your legs out while we're talking. And that can help alleviate kind of like that jack in the box feeling where everything is pushed down with their grief. Let's get it out. Let's ride this wave just like you do at the beach. Let's ride the wave, get back to the beach until the next wave comes. And so those are some of the things that I do with the people that I work with
Okay.
to help them release some of that stuff.
Nice. So sometimes individuals hide their grief because they feel guilty or ashamed of expressing their emotion. Did you feel like you grieved honestly?
We in my family were told it's okay to
Yeah.
cry. So we were able to express ourselves. And obviously, since I do what I do, I've been able to learn different techniques for that. My brother's a little bit different. He is number one male, but number two, a little bit older. And, he's like, all right, so he's a time and place kind of guy where he'll grieve at home. I used to just carry a box of tissues around with me, and if I'm at dinner and I have a wave of grief, I'm eating my pizza and crying. Like, I I've gotten to the point that I don't apologize for it. We're human, we have emotions, we feel them.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I've not felt that, but I know a lot of people do. A lot of cultures also are not able to express grief. They're shamed for it.
Because of the
Suck,
stigma around it.
mhm.
Yeah.
Suck it up. What's wrong with you? They're in a better place. And a lot of people that are well meaning may say things that actually increase the level of grief that a person can experience.
Yeah. And there's this whole stigma about grieving when it comes to somebody who commits suicide.
Hmm.
We'll talk about overdose, miscarriage, and
Hmm.
people are just hide those grief because they can't really talk about it in the open because of all the stigma around it.
Hmm. And those are very challenging
Hmm.
because, well, they did it to themselves.
Yes.
No kidding.
Yes.
But why? That person had to be in such an amount of pain
Hmm.
to choose and decide that pain is I can no longer bear that pain. And it's an irreversible decision. And most likely they just want to be out of pain. And so people when they ask, how did your spouse die? How did your And I work a lot with first responders who there's a lot of suicide in first responders. The department's like, yeah, no, sweep it under the rug. No, we need to talk about it. If somebody would have stopped and sat on a bench and bought him a coffee, would that have happened? So a lot of folks will, my husband died unexpectedly. They change it instead of my husband committed suicide.
Yes.
And the same thing, like you said, with overdose. I actually have a cousin who lost her battle with addiction by overdosing. She died because she took too much medicine. Not exactly.
Yeah,
It's challenging.
it is.
And people become addicts for a reason.
Yes.
You wouldn't wake up tomorrow, I don't think, Jane, and be like, hey, let's shoot up.
Yeah.
It's just not, you're looking for an escape of something.
Yes, that's the way they use to cope. There's the underlying issue that's going on.
I don't believe we give enough grace
Hmm.
to people who are hurting.
Now you mentioned that, how important is family support during grieving?
Depends on how tight your family is, to be honest. I'm very fortunate that my family we're pretty close. We're all still local. We drive each other crazy a whole lot, but when it comes to the big stuff, it's very, like, I couldn't have gotten through what either one of my parents without them. Now, if your family is estranged, it's a little bit different. But if you have siblings and cousins and aunts and uncles and, other people that you're close with, there is a bond and the understanding of that kind of grief and pain. It's a little bit different for someone who's not in that family to understand the impact. Because sometimes when you need a minute, you do want to share those happy stories. You do want to share the funny moments where you're like, do you remember when? And so you're laughing through tears,
Yes.
where, sometimes you can't do that with
Yeah.
people that aren't in family.
Thank you for sharing that. How is life now without both your parents around?
It's hard. I, quite honestly, between losing both of my parents and both of my dogs, which were my babies, I do my day to day. I get through my day, I get my tasks done, I do my job, I see my people, I go grocery shopping. I don't like to clean, but I do it. Do all those things. The nights are the hardest part for me because that's when I would call my dad. That's when I would call my mom. I called my mom every single night on the way home from work, whether she was with her or not. It was like Groundhog Day sometimes, that movie, where I'd call her and she'd say the same thing over and over. I'm like, what I wouldn't do to have that Groundhog Day conversation again. But the nights are hardest for me.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure holidays might be also a tough one, right?
Yes. Yes, especially the firsts. So the first Christmas without my mom, my first birthday without my mom, and then I had to go through it again without my dad.
Yes.
And my dad was my unofficial handyman. He wasn't very good at it, but he'd show up. And like, so if something breaks around the house, I will have a mini meltdown because I'm like, Dad's not here to help me.
Yeah.
And finding a reliable handyman is almost impossible. So those are the hardest moments when you're just like, I want them here. Like, I want to be able to pick up the phone and call and hear a voice.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were both over 70s, so there would be times that we would rotate taking them to the doctor. And it sounds ridiculous, but I'm super grateful for recording 2 of their doctor visits because I can still hear their voice.
You can still hear the voice. And
Mostly me and the doctor, but
not only that, you are blessed to have siblings that you guys can coordinate and work
yes,
together, because not a lot of people have those opportunities.
yes. And that's actually something that's in the workbook. Is, if you get hurt and it's just you or you don't have someone to rely on, how are you going to get your stuff done? How are you going to get to and from appointments? I am very lucky that I get along with my family and we have each other, and my mom's sister and my dad's siblings were both helpful while
That's
we navigated all those things.
that's wonderful. Any words of encouragement for somebody who has lost a loved one and is going through a grief?
Words of encouragement, reach out. If you're not comfortable talking to a friend or family member, call a friend, call an EAP, call a counselor, find someone. There's grief support groups. It's called Grief Share. I think it's a faith-based support group, but I think there may be some others. And there's a lot of counseling offices that actually do a group grief, especially after the loss of a spouse. They have a spouse grieving or a child or an infant loss. Those are especially hard. There's some support groups for that. And then if at all you were considering or thinking about suicide, call me, call 911, call or text 988. That's the National Suicide Hotline. Call someone because we need you here. We need you here.
Appreciate that, Courtney. And you are based in Virginia, is that correct?
Yes, I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
How can our viewers get in contact with you?
So I have a little business called Trauma Treehouse because trauma is hard. We got to hang out in the treehouse to get through it, kind of put those funny moments like we talked about with memories. So it's just www.traumatreehouse.com. All my contact information is on there. I'm also on all of the social platforms. I'm not so good on TikTok, but I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, so you can find me that way. And I'm happy to assist any of your listeners in resourcing them. If we're not a good fit, I'd be happy to resource them to make sure they get the support they need.
Courtney, it was a joy to have you, and I really hope that the information you have shared here today will resonate with a lot of our viewers and our listeners. Just give somebody hope.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing thing that you do and that you host, so thank you so much for doing your work too.
You're welcome there.
Thank you for listening to Unfiltered Minds Podcast. If you love what you're learning on our podcast, we ask that you please join the Unfiltered Minds community by subscribing and sharing our podcast on YouTube, or you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Our dedicated team of ADHD coaches are committed to making a positive impact on the lives of our listeners. Through our thought-provoking podcast, we offer valuable resources, PBT training for ADHD, and a supportive community that understands the journey of mental health challenges. Also, you can visit our website at theunfilteredminds.com, where you can sign up to be a guest on our podcast, as well as sign up for our 8-week parent behavior training course on ADHD.